hold on. Easy, I'm not gonna hurt you. Listen, we're here to stop the mutant. I'm from the League of Good Guys. My name is Dinah, and we sure could use your help. I figure you're a real threat to the mutant because he doesn't know anything about you. He hates that, you know, being a control freak and all. We suspect he's trying to take over the world, your world, and my friends and I want to prevent that. But we'll definitely need your help. Come on, we should get out of here. That could be the mutant now.
This is a test. This station is conducting a test of the emergency broadcasting system. This is only a test.
Oh, hello, Internet. What's going on? Welcome to the June Dirty Rectangles Online. Hi. Hello.
Hello.
We did it. We made it. Another month in the can.
Jared, where are your hats?
What? Oh, wait, I have a hood. Does that count? We could pretend there's a brim on it. I don't know if that counts.
The Yankee hood with no brim.
Yeah. Everybody who had the Dirty Rectangles hat, put it on, because I'm showing off my white on white, which you can probably barely see.
Oh, look at that.
How I like it. That's why I got it.
Are we just hawking merch right off the top of this thing?
I don't know. Nobody has the
paper.
What kind of show did this turn into? dirtyrectangles.com/merch if you want to buy your own white on white hat.
I just wanted one myself.
Hi everybody, welcome. We got some video games for y'all. Thanks for joining us. Eric and Quiggin, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing just swell. I'm loving it. Good old June. Longest days. Perfect.
Hell yeah. Eric Billingsley, how are you?
Yeah, pretty good. It was my birthday last week, and I got vaccinated.
That's right. Happy belated.
Looking forward to being able to hang out with people in real life again.
Hell yeah. Kizzy Adamo, how you feeling about that real life?
Oh, it's okay. I don't know what day it is or what time it is or anything, but other than that, it's nice out. It's summer. I know that much.
There you go. We're getting there, right? It's almost.
We're getting there.
Isn't summer like almost over?
I don't know. I said I don't know what day or time it is.
I don't even know what day or time it is.
Ottawa summer lasts till August and right on through. So
Jonah Davison with the hot weather takes coming in at the end there. James Eversmith, how you doing today?
Having fun. I'm celebrating International Heat Advisory Day. Got my cap on. I got my shades on to keep the light out of my eyes, and they're probably making a loud buzzing sound that's maybe being picked up by my mic. I know my old mic used to pick it up. Maybe this.
It's not being picked
up.
Okay
this time.
Nice. Aha! The only reason I bought this microphone. Problem
Improved
solved.
technology and slightly more professional as the show goes on here. We got a good show lined up for us, but before we do, we got some announcements. As he takes a big swig of beer, and I think James has some announcements he wants to share with some folks.
Oh, I have to go first.
Hell yeah!
Okay. I'll break the seal on the announcements. Some Toronto stuff that is going on. Let's see if I can get this set up for us. So I know that a friend of the show, previous Dirty Rectangles presenter, Megan Byrne, is doing her only live and public talk of the year. And it's tomorrow. I will put a link to it.
What service is it being broadcast or available?
It is Create Space Event. New media as a tool for placemaking. I'll put a link here in a second. So that is going on. Also, I've lost the window it's in. There we go. There is a queer games bundle right now on itch.io. It just started at the beginning of June, and I believe it's going till the end of June. I'm not sure. But one of our presenters today has a game in this bundle. Guess who it is? It's a game. you can guess, you can win. There is no prize. Also, I mean, he'll probably tell you, but yeah, something else to check out. I know that Eric's going to be talking about another bundle in a second too. What was my other announcement? Oh, a bunch of people in Toronto have games coming out for the Playdate. Everybody loves the Playdate. Everybody saw the trailer and the joke about the pen. Everybody loves it. Well, lots of people in Toronto have games coming out for it. Rakeshi from the Hentai Society, I believe, has a game called Far Away Fairway that is out on it right now. And I believe there's a couple of other ones from Toronto as well, although they escape me.
What's the joke about the pen? I think the pen's great.
I'm not making a joke about the pen. They made a joke about a pen in the trailer.
I think the Playdate's very cool, and I'm slightly grumpy that I didn't get one to dev on when I had a job. But I will still consider it because I saw today that someone made basically the equivalent of Bitsy, but for making Playdate games. Super easy. Make little walkabout games with code, optional in the browser, which looks really slick. So.
Is that Pulp?
Was it Jeremy?
Yes.
Yeah, that looks cool. Eric Billingsley.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight the indie bundle for Palestinian aid, which is going on for 2 days and 7 hours more. The current goal is $1 million, and it's currently at $578,000 raised. And if you buy the bundle, you get over 1,000 games, which is really cool.
I'll toss a link
The
into
funds
the chat
will be
there.
donated to United Nations Relief and Work Agency, which does work in Palestine. And I'll put the link in chat. And I think Jonah wanted to highlight some games from the bundle.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention a few because a friend asked me which games in the bundle were cool, and I basically said all of them, but also here's a few that you might be interested in. And just to mention a few, there are a couple of co-ops games are in there from Montreal, friends of ours. Nog and Depener Nocturne is in there. Rectangle's Meetup Classic Witch Ball is in there, as well as Botolo, one of the greatest multiplayer combat games ever devised that no one knows about. And out of Ottawa, we've got Spring Falls, of course, by our very own
Whoop, whoop.
Eric Billingsley, and The Eye of Ra.
Hell yeah.
And out of Toronto, there's Skyrogue and A Mortician's Tale, and there's a whole bunch of other amazing stuff in there, obviously, and you should get it just anyway. But
Get it and spread the word.
yeah,
Help raise some money.
let people who may not know about itch or know about these bundles or whatever know about it.
It's not just games. They also have music and asset packs as well.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And a ton of tabletop RPGs, including a bunch of single player, cool, like experimental ones. If that's your speed, that would be well worth checking out. I want to do some of them because a lot of them are just like, doodle in a notebook, introspective, thoughtful stuff. And I could probably think about things. It's probably time that I start thinking about things again, because I'll probably need to start thinking about them soon. Now that I can go outside again.
We're getting there. Thoughts will come. I think that's all of the announcements that we had. Super important stuff going on though. So follow those links, pass them around, play some games, spend your money if you have some. And before we move on to our presenters, though, this is a good time to talk about our code of conduct, which is also in effect at any and all of our events, whether they are online or in person. You can head on over to dirtyrectangles.com and read through the whole thing there. And there's also ways for you to get a hold of us on our website. And you can reach out anonymously or in person, or leave your name or whatever. And if you ever do want to get on the show, you could also reach out to us from our website or on our Twitters at Dirty Rectangles or at rectangles_TO for the Rectangles Toronto crew. What am I missing? Is there anything else there?
Discord.
Oh yeah, we got Discord.
Kickstarter also, sorry, the Kickstarter for Haste by local studio Hot Sauce Bread is still going on.
Yeah,
There's
that's a
7
great
days left.
We showed
raised
their trailer video
$12,000. So
last month. You could go and check that out.
And they've been
go
showing us
check that
progress.
out, share it around. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully they can make that goal.
And if you want to get on our Discord, dirtyrectangles.com/Discord, and that'll just fire you over to our Discord, and we'll see you there. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we will be back with our very first presenter of the night. Don't go anywhere. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are here with our first presenter of the night, Brian Dupuis. How's it going, buddy?
I'm doing okay. Yeah, how are y'all doing?
Pretty great. I'm excited to see what you got here for us.
Cool. Well, I will jump right into it. Yeah, I'm Brian. Thanks so much for having me, and yeah, thanks to everybody who's watching, and I'm excited to see all the other folks who are speaking tonight as well. So I'll try to get through this quickly, and then hopefully we'll have a little time to chat at the end. I got 3 titles: Play for Nothing on Making Games, or The Thrill of the Small and Incomprehensible, or Capitalism Can't Save You, but It Will Destroy Us All. And I'm going to try to sort of bring these together in a semi-coherent way, but maybe I'll crash and burn and it won't make any sense. So we'll see. Before I get going, I feel like it's really important for me to situate myself kind of as a person and as an artist, and to sort of, yeah, I think be clear about how I, feel about things that are going on in the world. So I just want to say, I think there's an intensification of like colonial violence happening right now against Palestinians, and I stand with Palestinians fighting for sovereignty on their homeland. I also think this is a time of really intense violence, colonial violence in Canada, and a lot of reminders right now that Canada is a nation sort of built on colonialism and genocide. And I think as a person who was a white settler in the U.S. where I grew up and then has lived in Canada for 10 years and is a white settler here, like I've been thinking a lot about like the actual impact of me being here on stolen land and trying to engage with that in an accountable way and like a proactive way. And also fuck white supremacy, because fuck white supremacy. Here we go. So yeah, I'm Brian. Hexcavator is a name that I sometimes make games under. He, him, or they, them pronouns. This is my portfolio website, my itch profile. There's me on Twitter. I like talking to people. If you want to reach out, please do. So yeah, I'm a game developer and artist and sort of writer a little bit. That I've been doing this for, I guess, about 8 years, and I sort of came up through the kind of queer anarcho-punk scene in Washington, D.C., and I didn't get interested in making games until relatively recently. And I remain really compelled by the sort of nexus of like visual and sonic and kind of narrative potential. But I've struggled a lot with sort of finding a place for myself in like what I understand is like the different social and kind of economic spaces where people make games. So that's kind of a lot of what I want to talk about tonight. And in the meantime, show off a few things that I've been working on lately, which are partly pictured here, but I'll get into a couple more of these in a little detail soon. And I mostly work on stuff sort of on my own, and then on a couple of different small teams with people that I really respect and care about. So yeah, one of the ideas I want to kind of focus on tonight is this like this concept of anti-games, which is sort of just a philosophical gesture, and I put it's a potentially useless idea here because I don't want to give the impression that I feel didactic about this or that there aren't a million ways to think and talk about this stuff, but I think for me this is like a useful coagulation of a bunch of ways of thinking about different aspects of first games and then like what I want to do differently in my own creative practice and as like a person who is like in a community of people doing this and maybe hopefully some of it is resonant. Yeah, so before I talk about anti-games, I'm like, what's a game? I got to contextualize that a little bit. So this is, there are, I'm sure, a million exceptions and edge cases that don't fit into this, but this is just kind of like a generic starting point that I think is useful. So games, clear rules and mechanics, often some sort of story arc, and I think importantly, they're player-driven, whether they're competitive or cooperative or solitary. Games often have a cohesive style and tone, and that tone is often dictated either by like market or perceived audience or like genre, and then sort of systemically or in terms of how these things go out into the world. I think games are often either commercial objects or art objects, but rarely both, although there are some exceptions to that. But I think there's actually a more distinct line there than maybe there could be. And you know, in both cases, like games tend to be very outcome driven. Like people, like a game is the final product of the game that people interact with in the world, like when it's done. So following from that, I'm like, what's an anti-game? And I've been thinking a lot about, you know, these three same categories and how to sort of like throw a wrench in various gears. So I think narratively and mechanically, anti-games, in my mind, have opaque rules or goals, or maybe no rules or no goals. They have fragmented stories, and they have limited player agency. And I don't mean that in the sense of like lack of dialogue options or like quick time events or something like that, but in the sense that they do something really substantive and meaningful in the way that they intervene on your expectation that as a player, you're sort of like the engine of like driving this thing forward. I think similarly, aesthetically, anti-games in my mind are like made of arbitrary or clashing elements, and that could be like high and low fidelity, you know, audio and visuals. It could be a lot of different things. And I think a lot of times those clashes are dictated by unusual constraints. So rather than something like your market or your genre, you know, it's like people working in abandoned hardware or like engines that have been deemed not commercially viable. I think there's a lot of different ways to frame that, but I think that aesthetic kind of like rough edges, embracing of rough edges is important. And then in terms of like what to me anti-games kind of are in the world, I think they're like process-driven games or process-driven works, and I think they're small in scope, and I think they're explicitly experimental, and I think explicitly non-commercial. And before I start talking about my own stuff, I just want to clarify really quickly that by experimental, I don't mean inaccessible. I think that however weird the thing you're making is, you have a responsibility to try to make sure as many people as possible can play it, and I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive. And by non-commercial, I don't mean indie, which I feel like has become just a stand-in in a lot of cases for like aspirationally successful under capitalism, or just like a small corporation instead of a giant corporation. But I also don't mean free by non-commercial, because I think valuing labor and valuing process is things I've been thinking about a lot in this kind of idea of anti-games. And when I say constrained, I don't mean pure. I don't like this like bullshit nostalgia gatekeeping stuff is like not at all what I'm trying to get at. I think that like I'm interested in constraints as like a way that creative people stimulate their own imaginations and kind of like do their work. So first thing I'm going to show is a game that I sort of just finished called Stay Home, an anti-game that I just finished called Stay Home. So I'll just show a little video of it and talk about it. Hopefully this audio comes through. So basically this is like a bathroom simulator where you're in a washroom and you can click on things and you pretty much get the results that you expect. So like, you know, you can flush the toilet, you can turn on the sink, you can stop the sink up, you can listen to a shower radio, you can open and close the window, start the shower, and as you're doing this, like, the time of day passes, and there's like a bit of weather outside potentially, and yeah, basically that's it. I'll wait for this to finish. Yeah, and well, yeah. So what I'm interested in here, and like why I wanted to do this, is I feel like a lot of times in like big open world games, people are like, oh, like, can you go in the buildings, or like, can you flush the toilet? And I'm like, well, what if you were just trapped in one building and you could only flush the toilet, but you could like flush all the toilets in that room, and you're having this kind of like deep interaction with like a very flat space, and you don't get any other narrative or mechanical context, and you're kind of just like able to like be in this very familiar kind of environment and sort of watch how things interact with each other sort of predictably. And I think at the same time that like mundane objects can be really evocative. Like, you know, I think the kind of sensory experience of like, you know, a steamy shower, or like, you know, night outside a window from within a lit space, or like hearing the breeze outside or listening to the weather change outside, like while you're in you know, a room with an open window or a closed window, can be like really evocative and do a lot of narrative work on its own. You know, I think more conceptually, what I'm really interested in is this idea of like, is a screensaver a game? Is an ant farm a game? Is a snow globe a game? You know, to what extent is observation participation? And for me, that's like a cool angle to play with this idea of like anti-gameness as a mechanical thing unto itself. Yeah, so yeah, I think it's important to kind of like talk about some of the people that inspired me to work on this. So I'm not gonna. I realized when I was like talking through this ahead of time, I was like, if I start talking about all these games, I'll just go on forever and ever and ever. So these are a few games that really inspired me in sort of thinking through this particular thing. And I'll just leave that up there for a second, and then if you want to ask me about any of them later, please do. So the second thing is a little project called I Don't Think I've Walked This Stretch of Road Before. I'll show a little video of that. So this, I wanted to make kind of like a sort of like short interstitial 3D vignette without using sort of like a 3D engine like Unity. So I'm working in Game Maker, which is kind of predominantly like a 2D engine, and I wanted to sort of like piece together a 3D game, not like from scratch, but in a more like incremental way, where I was kind of like learning how each part of the process worked. So basically, you're a person kind of walking down. You play more of like a character in this one, and you're walking down kind of an endless street, and this person is in a moment of maybe crisis or catharsis or discovery, and is like interacting with these objects from their life, and you know, you're getting like little bits of a story from those objects, and some of them are more mundane, like the household radio, and then as they continue down the street here, you'll see there's kind of more of this presence that the the character is encountering that kind of develops over time. That's that. But it always wants to start over when I finish. So yeah, in this case, I think what I'm really interested in kind of narratively is this idea of like anti-climax or like an interstitial story where a character is like, you don't see the beginning and you don't see the end, you just get like a little bit of the middle of somebody's story. And I think again, kind of conceptually, like I mean this is in a lot of ways kind of just like a walking simulator, and I think is recognizably like in that genre, and I think that's a type of game that really appeals to me in a lot of ways, just kind of like passing through a space and interacting with it. But one of the things that I always kind of like, I think a lot of sort of so-called walking simulator games are like very these very lush worlds that you get to pass through, and you know, they're sort of a reaction to the idea of like, oh, usually like these beautiful worlds that people build are just like killing views, and you know, and I think I was like thinking a lot about the idea of, well, if I try to build a 3D world, it's going to be really ugly and clumsy, but like how can that be evocative, and like what is the value of like a sort of walking simulator in which you don't really get to wander and you're mostly encountering like negative space, and you're kind of in the middle of a narrative that you're sort of just bearing witness to like a small part of, like rather than being at the center of. So I think that's sort of what I'm trying to explore. And again, I think here's some folks that I found inspiring and kind of like thinking about this. Take Shelter is a film that I think is a really interesting exploration of like the tension between like perceived mental health crisis or like paranoia, and then like the possibility of somebody being sort of tuned into something like really awful that's going to happen in the future. And so I think that narrative element was like really front of mind for me. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about is a game called Why'd You Go and Fuck It Up? Abbreviated here. And this is sort of like the most game-like in some ways in terms of having like arcadey mechanics and kind of goals. And the premise is that your character is like a low-level employee of a resource extraction company on another planet, and you've been sent to basically like pump this ooze out of the ground. You have all these tools that you use to access this ooze and store it in tanks that are awaiting like a sort of retrieval by drones. And as you do this, you start to disrupt the ecology of this place. And that brings you into conflict with these like alien bugs that are otherwise kind of like peacefully just like doing their thing on the planet. And the idea here for me was that there is basically a conventional game, like is the top layer of this, but the part of the system that I'm working on a lot right now is this complete parallel experience where and you can see like little hints of it here, even though it's not super developed yet. But if you don't do anything and you refuse to play the game and you refuse to do the mechanics that you're being tasked with by the sort of supervisor in the game, the world starts to grow around you. And so there's like flowers starting to blossom here, and the aliens sort of go through their own life cycles, and you immediately start to piss off the the company that you work for, in which you're just like a tiny little cog. And so I was really interested in this idea, which I think has been explored like in kind of like microcosm by many other people, but that like, the screensaver version of the game, again, where you don't participate, is actually sort of like the ethical engagement with the game world, and then like the version where you do what you're being told to do, that and the version that feels familiar as like a video game or whatever is like sort of overtly hostile to like the health of this space. And at the same time, I think there are many games that sort of like start you out in kind of like an antagonistic role, and then like give you the opportunity to like turn good, and then you become like the hero of the world. And I wanted to intervene on that too and say, okay, well, what if instead like you were able to maybe make a choice that goes against the sort of rules of the game, but you're still just a nobody. So that's why I've written here, like, start as a nobody, stay a nobody. Like your resistance to this like larger destructive operation that's happening is very minor, and you can only kind of disrupt things so much. And a lot of what you're doing is sort of like laying the groundwork for like a change that you don't get to see. So those are three things that I've been working on. And again, here's some influences. Lauren Schmidt does a lot of really awesome sort of like procedural, like organic simulation, and I've found like her work in general like powerful in thinking through this, and then lots of like space people with space tools games. So why would I do any of this? Is it just an aesthetic posture? Is it a political manifesto? I guess like as I said before, you know, I hesitate because I don't act like this is some totalizing theory of how I think people should engage with like making stuff. But I do think that there are some potential cool benefits of like kind of engaging with creative process and like video game or anti-game making process like this. So here are some reasons I think it's good to move away from what is. I think games as products is kind of a trap because the market always controls what's possible, and I think there are many manifestations of that. I think we're like in a moment right now where capitalism is like rapidly adapting to try to create a semblance of flexibility around like a greater diversity of like people and identities and ideas in games. And I think that it's worrisome because that same system is very resistant to challenges to itself. And I think people who are like actually critical of the structures of capitalism tend to get sort of discarded, even as that kind of flexibility appears to be happening. And then at the same time, I think games as art objects is like a tricky one because a lot of people believe that if you're doing something as an artist, then you're passionate about it and there shouldn't be any relationship between your labor and like money or like remuneration or like, you know, that what you're doing is not like an act of labor, that it's sort of like something that you should be happy to just have made and shown to people. And even though you don't have like giant corporations controlling funding, you have like state making institutions that have like a cultural agenda, or they still want to represent certain things in certain ways, and like you often have those systems if you want to get access to funding. So what do anti-games offer as sort of a paradigm that I think is positive? I think they're anti-capitalist. For me, that's a big positive. I think you decide what your game is instead of a marketing team or a curatorial board. You know, I think the weirdness of working in these kind of clumsy and clashing aesthetics and, you know, outside of like the most bleeding edge engines and stuff, like challenges the idea that like progress or success is something that like happens in the future, that you always have to be like moving towards this like as yet untapped technology. And I also think that anti-games sort of as a process focused discipline like kind of discourages all the like secret hype machine like NDA stuff that I think like games under capitalism require, and that I think creates a lot of just like weird distrust between people and a lack of transparency. I think anti-games are pro-people because developer identities and experiences are central, not hidden or tokenized to customers. There's like no limit on how much of yourself you bring into what you're doing. And I think really importantly, like fast failure is like something that extends to the entire process. You're not, like I think the sort of like lone genius in a basement, toiling in something for 10 years and then releasing this flawless gem to the world is like still kind of this mode that a lot of people are operating in, especially in kind of like indie games. And I'm really invested in this idea of like cheapening games, where I'm like, not in terms of like the value of the work involved in making them, but in the sense that like, I think if more people were making smaller things faster and supporting each other in the process of making the stuff, as opposed to just like the final outcome, the stakes wouldn't feel so high. And I think lower stakes are good when it comes to like making a living. And similarly, I think like linking process and outcome in a more integrated way makes it harder for people who are assholes but make commercially successful things to sort of hide behind like the commercial value of their work. And finally, anti-games are punk. Also important to me. I think divesting from industry means opening up space for accountability beyond like corporations like paying lip service to stuff that they don't actually want to do. I think oblique shit is inspiring in its own right, and that abandoned mediums are full of possibility. I think AAA has revealed very clearly over the last few years that it is like all giant corporate systems, banks, resource company, oil extraction companies, that it's about money. And I think that like, the us, when I say it's not for us anyway, to me just means like people who are interested in creative community, like outside of commerce. And that's really, in a lot of ways, like the central thing for me is like thinking about a creative process that is like about both being able to bring your full self to what you're working on and being able to like share that with people in like an ongoing and transparent way, not just like when your thing is done and you put it out in the world. So that's what I got. Thanks so much.
Woo woo woo.
Awesome. Thank you.
Great.
This
Yes,
is super
thank
cool.
you.
It was an interesting talk. A couple of things we were discussing that kind of made me think of related ideas is just the concept of people kind of being discarded by the industry if they don't fit into that sort of profit-seeking model. I think at the same time, you also have to watch out for sort of like the concurrent and seemingly always eventual outcome also of people actually being assimilated by it. Those ideas that were once outside now being brought in and being fully, the system becoming fully plastic to them very quickly, you know what I mean? That has sort of, seemingly happened with lots of other art forms, and a lot of artists in those art forms as well.
I think that I'm getting a weird echo. I think that in my mind, like I think a real like kind of warning sign of like industries flexing to absorb more things is like when it's mostly aesthetic, or when it's like when it's very much about kind of like the optics of change, like versus changes in leadership, changes in like who accesses resources and stuff like that. And I think that like it is really tricky because like again I think we're in this kind of mode where like because of like the mainstreaming of like racial justice struggles and talking about misogyny and patriarchy in much more kind of mainstream spaces, like there's a lot of big companies and stuff like that, and people sort of like racing to prove that they're on board with that stuff, but still maintaining this like upper tier of management or kind of like control of resources that is much more homogenous, kind of exploitative.
The other thing I thought was interesting with what you were saying, I'm actually sort of doing a little series right now where I sort of explore like the concept of like mastery or just sort of like learning mechanics in games, and how different kinds of games utilize that in very different ways. Some are very dynamic, some are sort of, the ones I'm focusing on is more kind of like these little puzzle games that are designed to be solved, which is like sort of something a lot of other games are trying to avoid for different reasons. But you're talking, we think about just the concept of as a designer and then as players of games, even just trying to learn and discern, or in the case of a more open game or a sort of like less sort of elaborate game like you were saying, even just deciding what the player actually wants to do in that game, like what are they going to strive for, you know what I mean? So you have some games where clearly the designer has a very clear thing in mind of, well, you're going to complete these levels and you're going to get to the end of the game. But then you have games like some of the ones that you were showing, or even something more elaborate like say like a heavy simulation game or something like that, where there's a lot of options left to the player, but they're sort of still sort of guided in that space, you know what I mean?
I think something that like along those lines that I'm really interested in, when I was working on the stay home sort of bathroom simulator game, I was thinking a lot about the parts of VR that I think in my experience have worked the best, which are like the one-to-one, like like job simulator or something like that, where you're like I've seen many people play that game in my life who are like not at all people who engage with video games ever, who just like intuited how to do things because it was like, oh, you just pick this up and you put it here, like you turn a knob and a faucet runs or something like that. And I think that there's something interesting to me about the idea that like we already have, we all carry all the experience and knowledge and expertise that we just like have in our daily lives, and often it's not utilized in games except in like a very specific way because it has to be like interpreted into like the game world, like through the rules and mechanics. And I think I'm interested too in the idea of like, well, what if the game is just like you already know what to do because you've been doing it your whole life? Is that still a game? If we just add in like these other kind of interesting layers of like time passing more quickly, or like you know what I mean? Like I think there's a lot of different ways to approach it, like you said. But I think that I'm interested in that idea of like the expertise we already have and like finding new ways to bring that into mechanics.
Well, one of my favorite parts that you talked about is kind of like designing mechanics that are designing mechanics and rule sets that are like antithetical to this, or anti-success, right?
Mhm.
So you have the explicit goals from like a management figure telling you what you should be doing, and then if you explore those mechanics and do that work, you're actually undoing what makes the place that you're in interesting. And I think mechanics like that, because as game designers, we're often taught a lot to like kind of streamline that process and make sure that all these goals align. But what happens if we start picking that apart and start moving in different directions where you aren't necessarily aligned with what the game is telling you to do? I think that's interesting in and of itself.
Cool. Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential reward, and like I think as a player it's really satisfying too when you kind of like when you buck the apparent system the game is trying to sort of put you in, and the game is like, I thought you might try that, and I'm gonna let you, and I'm gonna give you a path to follow now that you've kind of like broken outside of like the superficial like mold of what the game is. And I think there's like a lot of cool potential there in terms of just like, again, I think kind of like rewarding people's curiosity that like takes them outside of like what the game appears to initially be doing. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and you reminded me of this game we played in like years ago at Dirty Rectangles that was like the grad student simulator, where all you do is smoke cigarettes, make coffee, and look at your watch. And it was so good.
Yeah, I think stuff like that could be so beautiful. I don't know that particular game. It's just like it's these like little vignettes too that are like slice of lifey. I think you can insert, I mean, depending on your experiences and who you are and how much you relate to like the thing is, I think you can bring so much of yourself into the space of the game, and the game doesn't even need to do that much to get you involved.
Yeah, that kind of mechanics that allows for a sense of empathy for who is represented in the game.
Absolutely.
Cool. Brian, thank you so much. This has been super amazing. Maybe one last time, where can everyone find you online? What's your Twitter and your itch and all that?
I'll can I throw my thing back up for 2 seconds?
Sure.
And then here, I'll just click share my screen. That's me.
There it is. Go see Brian online. Check out some of his games. Brian, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all your stuff with us. This was super, super cool.
Thank you so much for having me, and looking forward to everybody else who's speaking.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with our next presenter. Don't go anywhere. right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back with our next presenter of the evening, Chris FITZGERALD. Thanks for joining us today, Chris.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Woo woo.
Yeah, so I worked as an OIDMTC consultant for 4 years, and now I'm a producer at Bloom Digital. And it felt like I had all this knowledge that could be helpful to game dev companies. OIDMTC is a bit confusing, so I figured what better way to share this knowledge than at Dirty Rectangles. So really appreciate you guys having me on. My name is Chris FITZGERALD. I'm a producer, as I already mentioned. If any of you have a game studio, you probably have heard about OIDMTC, and you may have even been contacted an OIDMTC consultant, which I used to do. I worked at a shred firm, and I was the digital media person there. So yeah, they do tell you it's really complicated. It's best to have someone with you. Hopefully I can give you a bit of information. You guys can make that decision for yourselves. So what is OIDMTC? The main point of it is to fund job creation in Ontario in the creative fields. So if you have a video game studio and you're publishing games that you make money from, you are eligible. So good job. But there's a few other eligibility requirements, but really that's the main reason for the tax credit is to support interactive digital media products, entertainment products. They certify products and it's not a per company basis. And they really just want to make sure that you are hiring independent contractors and employees who reside in Ontario. That's the main points that are important to remember. So besides that being a video game company, are you eligible? There's two main calculations you guys need to consider to determine whether you're eligible. The first is 25% of your total development cost must be related to salaries. And then secondly, 80% of your total development costs have to be in Ontario. So that can be employees, salaries, and also independent contractors. So I know it's a bit confusing. It's not equal to 105%. First, figure out what the total cost of the product was. How much money did it cost you to make your game? And then if 25% of those costs are salaries, you're good. 80% of your costs are independent contractors and salaries, you're also good. I'm going to go into this a bit more and what this might look like. Here I have an example of a company. We're calling them Cool Games Company.
I think maybe the presentation might not be moving forward on our end here.
Oh, let's see.
There we go.
Oh, okay, great. So Cool Games Company. Mary is the owner of Cool Games. If she's an owner, you got to be on salary. Otherwise, there's some weirdness. If it's dividends or something, the CRA doesn't like that. So just if you own the company, you gotta be a salaried employee to be claimed. So in this company, Mary might be the only employee. And then she has a bunch of freelance contractors. They're all eligible too, with the 80% calculation. Bob, on the other hand, is an employee at another Ontario-based company that was contracted out to Cool Games Company because of his experience level. So he's ineligible. There's a bit of weirdness about why this is. Even if it's an Ontario-based company, you hire them, and it's Bob. He's in Ontario. All other eligibility requirements are met, but if he's an employee of another company, it's not eligible for this calculation. The reason is because this tax credit is specifically for people. It's the people who do the work. So this is to ensure that two companies can't try to claim this tax credit. It's either the company that was hired to do the work or the company that owns the product. It can't be one, it has to be one or the other. So by, taking that as an eligibility requirement, they prevent two companies from trying to claim. And yeah, so if the total product cost is 370,000, then Cool Office passes on both these fronts. I think a lot of times when I talk to people, they always wonder, maybe I don't have enough employees, I only have contractors, or, there's a lot of, ways to break it up. But the best thing to do for your company is to hire Ontario employees and independent contractors. The rest of it is, there's a lot of nitty gritty you can get into as you go through your claim, but that's the most important thing to remember as you're going through the process of making your product. So you do not need a consultant to do it. I know that was a lot of numbers.
Sorry, I think your slide
kind of
didn't
hard
change
to
again.
sort through in a slideshow.
Oh, sorry,
but-
Chris. I think your slide didn't actually change again.
Oh,
There we go.
that is interesting. Okay. But yeah, you don't need a consultant to do it for you. The one thing to remember is even if you hire someone, you have to know your documentation. You have to kind of who worked on it, where they were when they worked on it, all the pieces. You're still going to be responsible for picking all those pieces up and putting them together. So the consultant isn't necessarily, you can't just get a consultant and have them do the whole thing for you. You're still going to have to do some legwork. A lot of consultants, I don't know if any of you have been contacted by a consultant trying to get you to sign on with them. They usually do a contingency fee based off of the awarded tax credit, something like that, which is good if you think you might not be eligible, but it can be like 20% of what you would claim. For some companies, that's a lot of money. So might also, another thing you could consider is just hiring someone to kind of help you go through documentation, asking questions, and getting ready for any reviews that might come up. You do have a review with Ontario Creates, which is the agency that determines eligibility, and then also the CRA. So the review process can be a bit tricky. So yeah, you do not need to know a DMTC consultant if you know your products and your financials well enough. Bye, Barry. So yeah, I think as you're working on your projects, the two most important things to look out for is who you're hiring. If they're an independent contractor or an employee inside of Ontario, you're good. Any other time you hire someone else, you might want to, do some quick calculations to check, because you might have a person who's really good for the project and is based somewhere else. Might still be worthwhile for you to hire that person, if it doesn't screw up your entire claim. But if you do take too much work outside of Ontario, it might cause some issues of you claiming your product. So there is a deadline. It is 18 months from your fiscal year end. So the date in which you launched, whenever your next fiscal year end, you have to claim the product in that year. So, if you have a product, if your fiscal year end is September 30th and you launch the product on October 1st, it's still the next fiscal year end that you claim it in. And you do have 36 months to claim development costs from your launch going back. And also marketing costs is 24 months prior to launch and 12 months post-launch. So yeah, another thing that comes up is if you missed your deadline, you kind of maybe didn't know about Ontario Creates, or you just didn't have someone looking out for dates. Any new launch, anytime you go out on a new platform, that can be your new launch date, and you can claim and still go back 3 years basically for costs. So for a lot of companies, they pretty much can still get most of their costs covered. They might miss out on some expenditures that occurred early on, but that is the other important thing to remember. All right. Little hot tip I have that is not widely advertised. Nintendo charges you essentially for distribution costs. It's like a fee that they charge you for having your game on their platform. So you can actually claim that as a distribution cost in the marketing costs. Ontario Creates says no, but I have confirmed with the CRA. There's a bit of Ontario Creates has to follow is like the interpretation of the law, and then the CRA kind of like follows the law to the letter. So I guess there's a bit of some disagreements with them sometimes, but this is one thing that I think is really helpful for a lot of companies, that the whatever Nintendo takes out of your revenue for fees can be claimed as a distribution fee. What I lack in slide design, I make up for in digital media knowledge. So I'd really be open for anyone who wants to talk about the tax credit. I know a lot of people have questions about their specific cases, and thought it might be useful for some of the game studios who might be listening. So here's my information, and I don't know if anyone has any questions.
This is awesome, Chris. You also have, I think, a colleague in the chat who's been throwing out some tidbits in there as well too. So everyone's getting their questions answered, I think.
Oh, perfect. Oh, Miriam joined.
This is cool. So like let's say I'm a small studio, and by small studio I mean maybe let's play this game. Like at what point do I go from being just somebody making games to somebody that should be working towards something like this, like looking into something like this?
If you're like just starting out, put yourself on salary, I would say, is the best thing to do. And because a lot of times, like, accountants will tell you for whatever reason pay yourself in dividends, but you can't. That'll screw you up down the road.
That's
And
what
so if
happened to
you
me.
Oh yeah, because they don't think about tax credits, and so to put yourself on salary, you're pretty good until you have to make any hiring decisions. I think the biggest factor is if you're making games, you're eligible on all fronts, except you just have to check that your expenditures are meeting the criteria.
And you need to be incorporated, correct? You can't do this
Yes.
as just like an individual.
Right. Yes. Incorporate and then put yourself on salary would be the best steps you can initially take when you're starting out.
Cool. That's awesome. And I guess if anyone else has any questions in the chat, you have a friend in here who they can forward some questions to. I have your Twitter handle up on the screen here, which people can reach you at. And you guys have a Discord as well too?
Yes, we do.
Cool. All the options.
Yeah.
All the options that the kids need these days. Cool. Chris, thank you so much. This was super, super informative.
Good. Thank you, Sue.
All right. We'll be back soon with our next presenter. Don't go anywhere. decided I was going to show you guys a game I've been working on for a little while. I haven't shown you the rectangles in, a little bit. So this is my new game. I'm going to press L and R stuff here. No, I Mario Maker. I don't know if you guys got that joke or not. But what we're going to do today is explore some levels that my son has been working on. So
Very choppy.
which is it the let's see here. Could be let's turn the game audio down. Let's turn the game audio down. Maybe we don't even need it.
Extreme chop. Effects creator.
Okay. Extreme chop. We'll see how this goes for a little bit here. See if it gets a little choppy. What we're gonna do here is check some pictures of my son. So basically we've been spending pandemic playing Mario, and it's been a great time. So let's get in here. Is it totally robot voice? Again? Is it just me or is it you guys? That's a good question. Oh, okay, wait. Let's go here. Okay, how about now? Hey, internet, how about now?
Yeah, it seems better now.
Yeah, it's better.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
Okay, internet, wait a minute.
Okay.
Hey, internet, how about now?
Back to robot.
Weird. Okay, internet, give me a second. We're gonna do this. Some live action here. Take this. Get rid of this. Oh, a joke.
It probably hurts some of it. It's not total robot voice.
They still can't hear us. Okay. Hi, everybody. Technical difficulties. That's how things go. We're going to check out some games that my son has made, and hopefully it'll be better when we switch now. Right now. And everything is great. Right? Right?
Yes, it's great.
Is it actually?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shit. Okay, cool. So, great. Awesome. So we're not going to have any audio from this video game that I made, which was my joke that everyone missed. I didn't actually make this game. So what we're going to do today is check out some games that my son has been working on. My son loves Mario. He is a whopping 4 years old, and we've been having a really great time playing some Mario games here. And I think there's some other people on the call here who's also been playing Mario with their kids, right? Hint, hint, nudge, nudge.
Yes, sir.
Hell yeah. So we're going to check out some levels here made by a 4-year-old. And just to say, I'm just going to put him up here on the stream real quick. I didn't want to show too many pictures because, like, he's my kid and all, but, like, just look at this picture. Look at this guy. Look at this guy. Look at this guy. He's auditioning for the Beastie Boys here, and he got the part. So here we go. We're going to check out some of his levels. He is very into Mario. And it's very interesting. So these are some of my levels here. It's been really interesting to watch him basically slowly try things out as like to like learn how to make games, right? And to see like what he's interested in and what he isn't interested in and all these different things. One thing you could tell he's actually a pretty good speller, but as soon as you give him a keyboard with like buttons on it, he's just like, I'm going to press every single button. So all the names are basically like this. But let's go in here. We'll play some of these. I actually haven't checked out all of these levels. I wanted some of them to be a surprise. But basically what happens here is he'll wake up in the day and pick up the Switch and basically start farting around with some different ideas. And then he'll usually come over to me and be like, Dad, come play this. So this is one of his very first levels. You could tell because he discovered Yoshi, like a good 4 or 5 year old. Everything is Yoshi here and all the power-ups. So we made a nice little area for you to, explore in, try some power-ups, all that good stuff. I don't even know what this guy's called. Do you guys know what this guy's called?
Koopa.
Which one? Mecha Koopa?
Mecha Koopa.
After my time. he put in this little like chariot thing here that you could get into. I remember the first time I play tested this level, I got in here and it like flew around and it like blew his mind. He was like, "You can't go in there anymore." It wasn't his plan for the level, basically. There's the end over there. One thing that I really
He's
like about this
learning
level,
the hard way about play testing.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And yeah, please, any of you that feel like jumping in, please just jump in.
Yeah.
Um,
My oldest son, in his levels, there's lots of just dead air sections where you hop into a pipe and then you transfer to another spot.
we'll
And what
get
I
to
would do was I would hop into one of those the smile cars there and just fly across a level to his yelling at me, "No, no, you're not allowed to do that. No, no." And I'm like, if you designed your level better, I wouldn't be able to do that.
that's
You didn't
hilarious.
want me to.
One of my things about this level, so this was his first level that he made, and I love this little thing that he did right here off the top, where he's like, this is like a little thing to draw you in, right? At the very beginning of the level, to be like, hey, what's up here? A little bit of verticality, right? And it like gets you interested. And when you start the level, you have all these power-ups here that are drawing you forward, which is also kind of cool. So like you're being drawn forward, but there's this one vine here. It's like, ooh, there's a vine here. And I'm sure this was all entirely unintentional, but I read through this with game developer eyes and was like, oh my God. So like you climb up this vine and you get to this little like cloud plateau, which is just like so nice and special. And he put a little 10 point coin up there. I'm like, yeah, that's what you do. That's what you would expect to find in climbing up one of these vines in a Mario game, right? I love it. Love it. 4 years old. And already figured a lot of this shit out, right? Super good. Okay, this is just one level. Let's get through this one. I also like what he did at the end here. Very good. Very good stuff.
My 4-year-old only has one level design right now, which is every level is a lava level. Always lava levels. And then he just fills it with turbo dash pads.
Amazing.
So you just constantly dash into lava. That's all you do.
Amazing.
The only way to win is to get the bullet bill hat. And that's it. Otherwise, you're just running right into the lava. It's great design.
We will get to my son's lava levels. Did you guys watch The Floor is Lava? It's we marathon through that. That is a show meant for 4 and 5-year-olds. Holy hell. And then yes, everything was lava after that. This one I liked a lot too. He's like starting to experiment with different tiles and stuff. He really likes the clouds. This is like these clouds come in multiple times all over the place, which is just like really cool. This kind of actually reminds me a little bit about Brian's talk at the top about like anti-games and stuff, this particular level, because there's just nothing going on. You're just having a nice little swim underwater with these clouds. And it's just
so
like
soothing.
It is.
And I like the background. He
the
chose a
background
good
is so nice.
background.
It's just the vibe. Like you're just down here.
Luigi's just going for a swim. And I feel that.
Thank you for calling out the Luigi. The other thing that I immediately knew that my son was mine once he discovered Luigi and was like, oh, we're just going to use him from now on. And I was like, good guy. Okay, let's do a couple more here. There's a few that I actually have not tried yet because one, he just makes an insane amount of levels. And two, because I kind of wanted to surprise myself a little bit. Some of the ones that he does too are like remixes, so he'll copy some of my levels from up above and just like destroy them, which are kind of fun.
My oldest son has about 20 levels, and they're all titled Quiet. They're all different, but every one of their names is Quiet. Just the word Quiet.
Oh, I love that. Okay, what do we got going on in this one? Nailing it. Time and a place. So this is clearly my son discovering that you can change the size of the levels pretty dramatically.
And then promptly save it.
And it's just Mario having a good run, man. Yeah, that's good stuff. There's another one coming up here that I thought was really interesting. Oops.
Has he discovered that you can add sound effects to things that you hit?
Not yet.
And that you can put enemies inside question mark blocks?
Not yet.
So you put an enemy in a question mark block and then add that laughing at you sound effect to that question mark block? So when you hit it, the monster pops out and then the game laughs at you? Because that's another favorite.
I think as soon as he realizes he can like record his own voice and do all that sort of stuff, I will not see him for a while. There is like a surprising lack of enemies in my son's levels, which I find like really nice and like pleasant.
I'll be honest, I was expecting the opposite. I was expecting like 5 Bowsers.
You know, I think a lot of people are with kids, and maybe it just depends on the kid, right? And like what they're into. Like,
Yeah. Because I know when I was playing Mario Maker and I'd click on random levels, I'd go to ones where it's like, here you go into this pipe, you fall into this room with 5 Bowsers and you die. And I would always be like, oh, a 5-year-old made this. But
Right.
maybe that's not true. Maybe a 35-year-old actually made that. Who knows?
My oldest son, definitely a lot of his levels are like battle holes, basically. You go into a door and you're immediately beset by 3 of the Bowser children.
Yeah.
And they're all casting spells at you. And the room has been limited to about a half the screen size. So good luck.
There's
Have
so
fun.
many
Look, have
levels like that. Yeah, like in the Mario Maker database. It's funny. And then it's like you can like give them like a thumbs down or whatever, but I'm like, if a kid made this, I don't want to be mean. Even though, yeah.
Got a nice little line of Goombas here. Ah. Ooh, a door, a mystery door. Let's see.
Lead.
Oh, that was fun. Good job, Bo.
Oh.
Yeah, that was another thing too. Once he discovered like doors and pipes, he was just like, I'm just gonna put a pipe directly to the end. And it's just like you start the level, you go down the pipe, and you're at the end. And that's my pleasant little Mario level. It's like, you know, it's been a hard year, guys. Maybe we just make our Mario levels a little bit easier on ourselves.
I like that a lot of these levels end with just like a 5-screen run with nothing going on.
And run to the
end. Just chilling, running.
See, there's a certain one I'm looking for, but there's so many of these things, and they're not great named. I can't really tell which ones are the ones.
The Denvibidivin.
Yeah.
Super Mario.
I have not seen this one.
Oh, see, that's it.
Wow.
That's a good name. Oh, man.
Give me that frog suit. Yeah.
You can't go wrong with the frog suit.
Okay, this is clearly him remixing some online level. I'm gonna go on record here and say my son did not make this. All right, let's try a different one real quick. There is one that I wanted to try and find. Hopefully this is quasi-entertaining or interesting to people. Really, this is just another opportunity for a parent to talk about their kid a little bit and to get everyone to listen. Let's try... Oh, that was the first one we tried. I really should have wrote down the one that I played before. Devonba? Devbenin, maybe?
The
Devbin.
Devonbin.
Oh, what's this? Oh, this is clearly somebody else's level, I think, as well, too. There was this one really great level that he built where he basically made a couple of branching paths, which I found really interesting. And it was kind of like you could go this way or this way, and they all had their own little things that you could do. And one brought you right to the end. The other one you had to go manually. The other one you had to do a little bit of work. And it was really interesting. And for sure, it was just probably him farting around on the buttons or something. But oh, here we go. Is this more like something we'd find in the McQuiggan household?
Yes, very much so. 7Y, why not? Yeah, just
all right. Let's see.
All the Bowsers.
I think we're gonna have a hard time here.
I guess they're not technically his children anymore, but all the Koopalings.
Aren't they?
Is that lava coming up?
They're not his kids anymore?
Man.
Is that a
Why
thing?
is
I think
Iggy...
Nintendo is a bit
Oh my
conflicted onto whether to make that canon or not.
So is Iggy like riding on Wendy's shoulder?
Oh. Yeah. We'll say
there you go.
We'll say that wasn't cheating.
You gotta hit that axe. There you go.
Couple of doors that get to each other. That's pretty cool. Anyways, I'm super enjoying this experience of like watching my son slowly get into game design, let alone even like games. Like a year ago, he could barely hold a controller, and now we have our own Mario World session going that we like double up on, and it's super cool. And he's got all these levels, and it's like my inner game developer heart grows and breaks every day he comes over to me with the Switch and is like, play this thing. Like, I just did this level, play it. And then as he berates me during it, he's like, don't go down that pipe. Don't get that power up. No, it's not how you play
playing
my
the game
level.
wrong.
He is, if he goes down this path as like a game design thing, he will be a tyrant. None of his games will be playable or enjoyable, but they will be beautiful. And I am very much looking forward to it. I don't have a whole lot more to say about this, other than, you know, if you have kids, you should try to get them to do some stuff. I don't know what our next step is going to be. I'm probably going to talk to Jeremy Penner a little bit and pick his brain.
You know what comes out on Friday?
What's that?
You know what comes out on Friday?
Oh, is the new thing? What's that thing called?
Game Builder Garage comes out on Friday.
I didn't think that was coming out for a while. That's fantastic. Yeah, I don't think we're quite there yet. So that's the scripting, visual scripting one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've preloaded it. We'll see what happens. I mean, I'll just let them go nuts and see if they build anything that's worth playing. Also, Wild Jeremy appeared in chat. So.
Oh, hi, Jeremy. We're gonna talk about raising game developers. Jeremy and I and Eric, we're gonna do another talk another day about raising game developers 2.0. I'm enjoying my experience so far. I don't know where it's gonna lead, but I want to keep making some games with my kid. I've also been trying to be like super hands off with it and like not guide it and just let it happen in a lot of ways, which has been really great. But now I'm like, okay, he's been exploring this now for like a year. What could we do? What could we do? Right? So maybe I'll be back in a bit.
Let's get some stand-ups in here. Let's get
you know,
let's get some tickets.
Son, have you heard about Agile?
So I've created you an Atlassian account. We're gonna sign you up on Jira, and we're gonna start giving you tickets.
It's an iterative approach. See, we want to fail sooner. It's
Well, now I just want him to run away and get out of this industry. So, thanks everybody. All right, that's going to be it for me. We will be back with our next presenter in just a minute. Don't go anywhere. Also, my OBS is all crazy because I'm presenting and all this stuff. So the bumper is going to be wrong for a hot second, and then I'm going to fix it. It's all good. We'll see you in just a second. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back with our final presenter of the evening, M. Laser Walker. Take it away.
First of all, I'm showing my whole screen, and I'm going to close that Twitch window or mute it so I'm not awkwardly hearing myself. Delightful. Hey, everyone. My name's M, she, her pronouns. I work at Microsoft, game stuff and making stuff to help the community like we're going to talk about today. And I also make experimental games on my own, but we're not talking about that today. We're going to be chatting about a tool that I built called Twine App Builder that makes it really easy to generate like Mac OS and Windows versions of your browser-based games for free. So this came about like a year ago now. Wow, time is meaningless right now. Like a year ago, I saw a Twitter discussion thread with the developer of a very prominent Twine game who was like, hey, I made this game. It won a ton of awards. Everyone loves it. It is also impossible for me to make money off of it. Like, reasonably, I don't make that much money off of itch.io's pay what you want, and I have no clue how I'd go about putting it on Steam or anything like that, so there's really nothing I can do. And a bunch of people jumped in and were like, oh, you should try Electron or MWJS or all of these technical tools that will let you like take a website and package it up as an app with sort of zero recognition of, hey, this is someone who is a really good game designer who can do really complicated technical things with Twine, who doesn't know JavaScript or the web development ecosystem or the entire suite of technologies you would need to know to do that work yourself. And so like that sort of stuck in the back of my head, and then I got really busy and couldn't do anything with it. But fast forward to now, where I basically wanted to sit down and solve that problem. So I have this thing that lives on GitHub that does that. So my design goals were, I want you to be able to input here is like an HTML file that Twine or some tool like Twine, like Bitsy, PuzzleScript, anything like that. You take that file, maybe some art assets, and you get out a Windows binary and a Mac OS binary, and you can theoretically submit those straight to Steam with as little work as possible. I wanted this to be something you can do in 5 or 10 minutes if you don't know anything about programming. I wanted this to be something that didn't require you to like download an app that was going to rely on like your computer's configuration. Like I've seen a bunch of these tools that were probably really good a couple years ago, but the person has stopped maintaining them. And now if you try to download them, they may or may not work depending on your computer. I also wanted to make sure to that specific point that if I stop working on this thing, it will still work going forward. Like that is a really hard problem, but we're thinking about that sort of sustainability. So I ended up with this GitHub repo that is using the part of GitHub called GitHub Actions, which is basically you can write some config as a text file inside a Git repo that is on GitHub, and that will trigger every time you push new code to GitHub. It will spin up some cloud servers that will run some arbitrary code for you. And if you're doing the sort of stuff I'm talking about, it's going to be totally free. This is one of those cases where we're using like big, heavy enterprise technology and co-opting it to make weird art in ways that like fall below the threshold at which they want to charge you money for it. So basically, this is a thing where all you do is if you have a game, you fork it, you add your game, and then that's it. You wait like 5 minutes and you have a version of your game. So I actually wanted to show off actually using this. This is going to be really quick because I don't want this, like, you are not here for a quote-unquote webinar. But so, if we just say, I have this copy of Porpentine's Howling Dogs that I downloaded. It is a single file. It doesn't work great because the way it's like trying to load some assets that aren't loading because this is a game that I just downloaded from the internet instead of actually having the actual Twine game locally. But whatever, if I just say it's Howling Dogs, great. A like secondary design goal ended up being, so I assumed like, oh yes, everyone knows how to use Git, everyone knows how to use GitHub, because I spend a lot of time working with non-game devs. And I found a lot of people who started using this don't touch any of the Git stuff. They sign up for an account, and then they just use like GitHub's web UI is letting you upload files. So all we need to do is we're replacing the built-in default file with our new index. We're adding that. And then I'm also going to go down here at like line 90, I think. Or can I make this a little cleaner? Let's call it Howlin' Dogs. Commit it, and we're going to change project's name. Cool. So that's all I did. If I then go to actions, we can see this build. It's going to take a little while. This doesn't matter, but I'm just going to cancel the ones we don't need. By default, this kicks off like every time you push new code to GitHub, it rebuilds it. There's sort of advanced level functionality where you can change that. Like if you're familiar with Git and you want to do it based on pushing a new tag or change the branch or whatever, that all exists. But again, I sort of started off by assuming like, yes, everyone knows how to use Git tags. And of course that is absolutely not true. So I made it a bit simpler. Watching this build is deeply uninteresting, but you can see that it's actually spinning up two different computers. There is a virtual machine running Windows to build it for Windows, and a Mac machine building it for Mac, which fascinatingly, because Apple doesn't really allow virtualization, this means like there is a physical Mac Mini somewhere in a server rack that is running this code. I think that's super cool.
That's fun to think.
Yeah.
Also,
and like it's all... Go ahead.
Sorry, quick shout out to Howling Dogs as well. It's classic.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, this is the one that I find so fascinating that GitHub gives it away for free, because that's got to cost them a bunch of money to pay a third-party service for all these Macs. But yeah, so a fascinating thing that I have found is I released this about 2 weeks ago. It's gotten a lot of traffic. A lot of the people are using it. Like if you look at like the Twitter replies, it is all of these like queer Gen Z folks with anime profile pictures who have no idea what Git is and who have no idea what GitHub is. And to me, it's super awesome that like that meets that design goal. Then they are able to successfully use this despite having no idea what any of this is, which is great. That is what this was supposed to do. And yet it also makes everyone I work with very happy because we're quote unquote driving new GitHub installs. But I've also seen a lot of uptake with sort of more established folks who made influential Twine games 5-10 years ago saying, hey, I am terrified that Google is going to change something in Chrome that's going to break my old game and I'm going to have no method of archiving it, which this theoretically fixes. So the project that it generates is basically a custom-built web browser that just opens your game. It's using a technology called Electron, which is the same thing that like the Slack app and the Discord app are using. And it's this very heavy technology that will let you like use JavaScript and web stuff to build desktop apps. And we're just doing the simplest thing possible of like shoving an HTML file in there. But so this is running a web browser. It is a full version of Chromium, but since it is a standalone app, in theory, if someone changes specs later on down the line, this executable will still work. And it's possible that Windows might change so that this executable will no longer run, but that's pretty rare. A lot of big businesses pay Microsoft a lot of money, so Microsoft to make sure that they can still run their business software from 30 and 40 years ago. So again, we can rely on the generosity of these large megacorps that don't care about us making weird art, and we can benefit off that for free. So yeah, with all that, we're done. So now if we just go back here, and there's a new release, this 3.0 release. And if we just download this, you'll see here's an awkward thing that I'm working on. We're going to get a bunch of security prompts because we did not code sign our app. Code signing a Windows app costs a couple $100 a year. I'm working on supporting that flow if you use it. But if your use case is uploading to Steam as opposed to like itch.io or something, Windows doesn't care if you are opening an unsigned app from an app that is signed. So you don't really need to bother signing games that are being distributed on Steam because it will just say, oh, Steam is signed, so you're good. But for this...
Would that work through the itch app as well, I guess?
I would assume, yeah, assuming the itch app is signed, which I would assume it is. And hey, we have a functioning version of Howling Dogs that is a standalone app. And I think if I click it, it might not work if we wait like 30 seconds. This is, again, the issue of this is not me having access to the real Twine files. This is like it's trying to hit a website that it can't necessarily hit, and it eventually times out. If you used your own game, it would work. You can add in your own images and music and all that good stuff. Yeah. Awesome. So yeah, that is the main thing I had to show off. You can use it. It is free. It is here. I also think like if the tech behind this sort of stuff is something you're into, we should talk. I love this concept of like taking stuff that is built for all these megacorps and is incredibly complicated and has thousands of people working on it and co-opting it for people who just want to make weird art. And I want to help more people do stuff like that. So happy to talk about stuff like that too. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So cool. I went ahead and dropped the link in the chat there. And I know a bunch of my students making Twine apps would love to use something like this because it makes it a little bit easier for them to create an executable and host it on one of their sites for portfolio purposes and stuff like that.
Yeah, like it feels that much more official having like a .exe instead of just a website.
Yeah. It's neat that you can use it for stuff other than Twine too. I think that's really cool. Like puzzle scripts and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and like I've seen some people already talk about how the Electron template. So like basically what that code does is when you run it, there's a different Git repo that has the template. It downloads that template and then it just literally copies over your files and runs the build command. And I've talked to some people who are like working on larger browser-based games and like writing their own JavaScript and doing all that, who are still like, I knew I had to do something like this, but this was a way more accessible way to get started, where I could start by just running my existing game through this, and then I could take your template and fork the template and make those changes and like ease in, rather than looking at like, here's Electron, here's this giant monolithic technology with very large documentation, and I have to figure out where to get started.
That's so cool. Have you noticed any like upward limits towards like what it can do? Like if I were to, could I spit out like a React, like a fancy React app or something like that, and run it through here?
Oh yeah, I mean, I haven't specifically tried that with like my infrastructure, but it should just work. Like Electron can handle, like Electron is built to handle, just the Discord.com application for chatting is more or less the same thing in the same client-side code that you're running in the Discord app. So it can definitely handle all of that. We are just ignoring, there's usually a lot of really complex code in ways that you can like interact with the native functionality. So Discord can use like your audio settings and stuff like that. So since all it is literally just opening an entire version of Chrome that is designed just for your app, like if it works in Chrome, it will work here.
That's so cool.
Yeah, awesome.
There was a question in the chat here. Will O'Neill asks, asking about max resolution and if there's widescreen support. So I guess that comes down to how the index file is set up, I suppose. I don't know. How would that work?
Yeah, there's some CSS. So like the good news, like with web technology, talking about resolution is very different from talking about something built in something like Unity, because you are not conceptually rendering pixels, you are rendering text and images and documents, and the browser can scale that up to any resolution you want. It does mean that as a Twine developer, or with whatever tool you're using, you might have to use CSS or some other, like mess with the HTML or CSS or JavaScript to figure out, like, if someone has an ultra wide screen, do I want to span the text really wide, or do I want to have like a reasonable maximum size? But this is going to act exactly the same as your game would otherwise, just running it in a web browser. Like, you can have a web browser be very small or very large. This is going to act exactly the same way that it otherwise does.
Right. Super cool. Any other questions from anyone else here?
While we're seeing at that, I can also talk a little bit about, well, this stuff is going to take a while longer, but I'm also starting to look into how to add iOS and Android support as well, which is a bit more complicated. But I think that is potentially really interesting too, because if people want to sell their games, I think there is, I'm not going to say it is easy to make money selling premium narrative games on mobile, but it is probably slightly easier than trying to sell a Twine game on Steam. Yeah, but that has even more technical challenges because like the equivalents of Electron are far more complicated. Dealing with code signing on both iOS and Android are much more complicated. Like there's a lot more stuff for me to wrap and make simple than there is with this.
Yeah, that's cool. I like what you were saying too about like you'd mentioned there was like a lot of like youth picking up this tool and
Yeah.
more ways that you can deploy this into the places where they already are, right? Like they're already on their phones all the time.
Yeah.
So how do we make that a little bit easier for them, right? Super
Yeah,
cool.
like for a lot of them, like being able to give them a Mac.dmg is less exciting than, you can run this on your phone.
Yeah.
We have somebody asking about Mac OS code signing. Is that something you're looking to support?
Yeah. So right now, I was literally working on this today. Right now it supports it if you're willing to do a lot of work yourself. Like if you are a very technical person and know how to like generate all the certificates and all that. I am working on making that more automated. This is a much harder problem of, again, if you're looking at people who like not only are a questionable level of like technical competency, but also don't have a Mac and reasonably don't want to spend $600 on a Mac Mini. I'm fairly confident I can get it to a point where I can have you notarize and code sign your Mac app completely using GitHub Actions. But it's still going to require you to pay $100 a year for an Apple Dev certificate, which is a pain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. I think that's all the questions that we have here. And also brings us to the very end of our evening. Em, thank you so much for the presentation. This was really, really great.
Yeah, thank you.
We're going to come off camera here, and feel free to stick around as we close things up if you want.
Yeah.
See if we can get our cameras to work. Cool.
Yeah,
so
no.
that's
actually, I'm going to publish the thing.
Okay. So that's another rectangles in the bag. My camera is broken. That's okay. Somebody say something nice while I fix this.
At least the stream didn't crash.
Doritos and chat, everybody.
The first time in a while.
Yeah,
made it
first time in a very long time.
I have to find the stream key and broadcast it to the entire internet when I took over because I was too dumb to start up studio mode.
You know what?
Dorito, I'm incredibly excited about the idea of using the Twine Builder to convert website games into executable games. Reminds me of the bad old days of using Ant and things like that.
I'm gonna have fucking nightmares now, Eric. Thanks. Shit. Okay, so that was a great month. That was a great snappy little month. Folks, thank you so much for sticking around, checking out all of our amazing presenters. Also, thanks to all of our presenters and for sharing all their amazing knowledge, games, just their time, good vibes, all that good stuff. This VOD will be saved on YouTube sometime tomorrow and also available on our website, dirty-rectangles.com/TV. And you could check out all of our video content there. James has been working on a new show. What's your new show, James?
What did I call it? A puzzling game? I think I called it a puzzling game.
Perfect.
It's just me playing the adventures of Lolo 3 and various other tile-based puzzle games. I'm probably going to be playing Baba's You next, or a little known game that just came out on Steam called Bumpy and Dumpy, I think it's called. It's about two little dinosaur creatures. Anyway, you can check it out if you're interested.
Sounds great. And other stuff, fill your pandemic time with Rectangles TV or not. I don't care. I kind of care. I kind of care.
If you want to be on a future show, though, please get in touch with us. You can hit us up on Twitter at rectangles_TO for the Toronto one, at Dirty Rectangles for the Ottawa one. Or I posted the Discord earlier. I'll post it again. You can always come in there and request in the presentations requests. We're always looking for presenters. We're looking for people that have just started working on a game, people that have made a whole bunch of games and it made them have some sort of epiphany about game development, or people that have just finished one game and want to show it off. Just anything related we're always very interested in like people's processes or people's thoughts and feelings about games. So yeah, don't be a stranger.
Nailed it. Any closing words, thoughts from anybody here?
Get out there, get your vaccinations, and then come and hang out. I'm lonely.
Nailed it. This is the smoothest outro we've done in a very long time. It's weird because everything's like not broken, so I just actually don't know what to do. Okay. Oh, there's Yuffie. There we go. Thanks, Kezia. A nice traditional exit. All right, folks, we are out of here. It's been real. We will see you next month. Everybody say bye, Yuffie.
Bye, Yuffie.
Bye, everybody.
Yuffie.